The Sofa Superstore fire in Charleston, South Carolina took place on June 18, 2007 from 7:08 p.m. to June 19, 2007 at 4 a.m. It took the lives of 9 firefighters and injured 18 more. Lack of sufficient radio communication, incident command, proper PPE, water supply, and proper hose advancement created a scenario that was difficult to control and resulted in one of the single largest loss of firefighter life. The lessons learned from the incident, in addition to the investigations, were used to establish new guidelines for safer firefighting strategies and tactics.
Hi guys, my name is Nikki Chamberlain and I am part of the group that is doing the Sofa Superstore fire, and I have the strategy. So let's start. At 19:07, a possible fire behind the furniture store call came in. At 19:09, the gong rang for Battalion Chief 4, Engine 10, Engine 11, Ladder 5, Engine 16, and Engine 12. At 19:10, Engine 10 was instructed to put out the original source of the fire in the trash bin at the seaside of the building. At 19:13, Engine 12 was instructed to lay a 1.5-inch hose line on the side of the building. Also at 19:13, Engine 15 was also instructed to lay a 1.5-inch hose line at the seaside or the rear side of the building. At 19:15, Engine 16 was instructed to lay a 2.5-inch hose line on the A side of the building near the front door. At 19:22, Engine 11 engineer radioed to Engine 16 that they had to look for another fire hydrant. At 19:24, Engine 12 radios to boost supply line by 50 pounds to Engine 10. At 19:26, a phone call was received that there is a victim trapped inside the building on the C side of the building. They are now in complete offensive mode. At 19:28, Incident Commander was looking for firefighters to assist in the search and rescue of the victim. At 19:30, Engine 11 lost connection with the 2.5-inch hose line due to traffic running over the hose lines. At 19:31, Engine 5 had to reposition to the D side of the building. All Engine 16 radios to call for a possible, so they could call the police to relocate the traffic that was running over the hose lines. Also, Engine 15 firefighter calls for a mayday as he has run out of air. At this time, the fire chief says that they need to evacuate, and now they are on full defensive mode. At 19:36, the front windows of the A side of the building are knocked out and black, thick smoke begins to roll out. At 19:37, the fire chief calls Engine 15 captain and crew, but there is no response. At 19:38, the fire chief radios for everyone to abandon the building. Also, Battalion Chief 2 wants Engine 16 to boost water pressure to Engine 11. At 19:39, Battalion Chief 2 also wants to boost pressure to 200 psi to Engine 16. At 19:44, the Incident Commander calls the City Water Department to have more water pressure diverted to the area. At 19:47, Engine 13 laying supply line to Ladder 5. At 20:05 hours, the Ladder 4 was put into operation in the building. At 2200 hours, the fire was brought under control. At this time, the fire had killed 9 victims.
Firefighting tactics unsuccessful. Hose lines that were not the proper size of the space and the volume of fire. No horizontal or vertical ventilation measures were initiated to support the offense attack. Vertical ventilation was needed to release the hot fire gases that were trapped inside the building and spreading throughout the void spaces. The ladder company is expected to provide ventilation, but they were operating in one of the hose lines. No ceilings were opened into the showrooms to check for fire extension into the void spaces. The thermal imaging camera from Ladder 5 was not brought into the building. The fire extended into the exposures on 3 sides of the loading dock. 2 1.5-inch pre-connected hose lines were advanced into the loading dock, one by Ladder 5 from the showroom and one by Engine 10 from the exterior. Each attack line was configured to flow 60 gallons per minute, even though the nozzles had higher available settings. The combined flow of 120 gallons per minute was insufficient to control a fire in an area of more than 2,200 square feet that was loaded with highly combustible furniture. The additional 2.5-inch hose line that was advanced through the showroom by Engine 16 would have increased the total flow to approximately 376 gallons per minute. This line was never operated due to the water supply deficiency. At least 733 gallons per minute would have been required to suppress the fire within the loading dock. There was very little radio communication involving the members who were conducting interior firefighting operations, other than the fragment distress messages. No progress or condition reports were transmitted by the company officers during the period of offense interior operations. The command officers who were on the scene did not transmit any specific instructions to the companies inside the building or request any progress reports from them. Conducting an offense fire attack with 2 engines supplying the attack lines with tank water and no supply lines connected to hydrants is a very high-risk situation under any circumstances. The firefighters were found to be wearing station uniform shirts and trousers that were made of 100% polyester. These uniforms did not comply with the NFPA standard for such items. In several cases, the uniforms items had melted due to direct or indirect thermal exposure.
Lessons learned by Pat Daniels. The overall lack of organization on the scene led to multiple factors resulting in the loss of life of 9 firefighters. NFPA standards and guidelines provide a foundation for departments to adequately train and maintain all aspects of firefighting, from the equipment to the tactical deployment and management of emergency services. Lack of organization in the command structure. The incident commander is the position of command that encompasses every phase of an incident and must be implemented on every assignment. The Charleston Department policy indicates that the highest ranking officer on the scene is the IC, though with this case it was never clearly stated at the incident. A safety officer didn't exist in the district at the time of the incident, and the investigation exposed flaws in training and tactical management. As a result, Charleston spent over $8 million in an overhaul of their department standards and training to prevent tragic events like this from reoccurring. Communication failure. Some of the departments responding to the Superstore fire operated as PSDs, which is a public service district, which had their own dispatchers, and this caused problems with communicating with the city fire department personnel because of their issued radios were not all compatible. Reports to local police on the scene weren't adequately made to redirect traffic away from supply lines behind the structure. Cars kept running over the lines, which significantly reduced the supply pressure. Firefighting and PPE. The investigation discovered that fallen firefighters had PPE that was not properly worn or compliant with the NFPA standards. Department SCBA bottles were below 90% capacity, and that exposed departmental standards below the NFPA standards. Maintenance discrepancies on Engine 11 apparatus. Operators believed there was a pump malfunction, when in actuality, operating procedures outlined a necessary pause in neutral before engaging the pump to prevent unnecessary delay. The SOFA Superstore fire demonstrated how incident command is crucial to success on the fire ground. Multiple factors led to the deaths of 9 firefighters, but with better tactics and execution, it may have been prevented. Risk a lot to save a lot, risk a little to save a little, and risk nothing to save nothing.
On June 18th, 2007, the Charleston Fire Department lost 9 of their firefighters during the Sofa Superstore fire on Savannah Highway in Charleston, South Carolina. This loss changed the Charleston Fire Department and continues to serve as a means of education for universal firefighting tactics and strategies. In regards to these tactics and strategies in which were used, not used, or even misused by the Charleston firefighters, we have learned that proper hose lines, nozzles, and GPM settings must be available and used according to the fire size and intensity. Proper ventilation and attack must be initiated in regards to the fire itself. The allocation of personnel on scene must be established. Void spaces must always be taken into account. Proper equipment must be utilized during a fire, in this case, thermal imaging cameras and water supplies. Proper PPE must be enforced and followed by crews at all times. Command structure presence and organization must be clear and established. An available and successful means of communication is critical. As you can see, many mistakes were made by the crews at the Sofa Superstore fire that day, mistakes that cost 9 good men their lives. Thus, proper firefighting tactics and strategies must be employed during any and all calls, for they can quite literally be the difference between life and death.